When we passed the budget last year, we had a surplus. But we know there was a potential structural deficit, which meant that there would be some ongoing expenses, but it assumed not a nickel of new revenue. You know what happened in the fall? We came back. There was actually a surplus. We put half the money in the rainy day fund, half the money toward property tax cuts.
Certainly feel property tax relief is very much in order. The second area, we want a balanced approach, is that we think that we should be doing more in the job training arena. Now, I think it's good that the governor did at least address that in this package. I'm all for, if you have a private school that receives no taxpayer money, then it's up to the parents to decide. But when you're putting substantial millions of dollars in taxpayer money now, and especially with how much they broaden the voucher program statewide now, you know, it should be clear to everybody, you're talking about millions of dollars that are at stake. And of course, even more important than that is the education of our children or their future leaders.
Science, technology, and math, which we all agree, Republicans and Democrats, that's a lot of the jobs of the future. If we're going to make sure kids earn a good living, they've got to have those basic skills. So Governor Walker's plan to say that we want tougher Wisconsin standards than the national norms, that we want to make sure that they are determined by Wisconsin elected officials and those who are education specialists by having this commission which will report to Tony Evers. Tony Evers would have an opportunity to promulgate rules that would come to the legislature just like it should have in the beginning. You should
be surprised. I haven't seen one coherent actual piece of legislation come out of all the rhetoric that we've heard on this issue. I mean, even the WMC and Jim Morgan, who heads our education department, said he thinks they make perfect and imminent sense to have core standards. But you know, far more important than this issue, which I think is really just to kind of excite their base that, you know, on the far right-wing Tea Party, the base that somehow call it Obamacare and all this craziness.
I haven't heard that. That's a good line.
Yeah, well, you might start using it now. But the real issue is fair funding for our schools. I mean, the Republicans took $1.6 billion out of the public schools.
Peter, that's not true.
Now, to me, that affects every school child in the state. It affects our future competitiveness. That's where we should be putting our attention. That, and I do agree with the speaker on the accountability side. But this Common Core, worth looking at long term, but it's a lot of to do about very little compared to what really counts.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think that the idea of the minimum wage is problematic, okay? The market actually sets those wages, right? So there are people all across the state who are making way more than minimum wage, and they don't have to because they have the skill set, they have the ability, they have the work ethic. You know, somebody might start at $7.25 an hour, they prove that they're worth it, and before you know it, they're making $10, $12, $15 an hour because that's the way the private sector works. You reward hard work and you reward the ability of people to learn on the job and better themselves. I think what so many people want nowadays is just easy fixes. So the idea of just having government come in and say, we're going to wave a magic wand and take money out of the private sector because that's where it comes from. I mean, prices have to go up. This is not a free thing. You don't just raise the price of you don't just raise wages at a fast food restaurant and expect that they're going to make less money. They're just going to raise the prices to all consumers.
Look, first of all, wage inequality is a huge problem in America right now. You know, there are some Republicans that have told me privately they don't even believe there should be a minimum wage. People want to work for $2 an hour, they should work for $2 an hour. But what I believe, and what I think most people believe, clearly over 60% of Wisconsinites, is that you have to set a certain floor. Now, I agree with the speaker, and it's true. I mean, wages generally are set by the private sector, but there has to be a floor.
Society helps to make sure that people are taken care of in a whole lot of different ways, as opposed to just mandating a higher wage. We have BadgerCare. If you're poor in Wisconsin, if you're at poverty or below, you get free health insurance. You get rent assistance. You get food share. You get electricity assistance. You get a free cell phone.